Greetings and welcome to the retreat entitled Walking with God During Difficult Times. Thank you for joining with us. My name is Fr Mike Higgins, and I'm on the retreat team here at Mater Dolorosa. I, along with the other members of the retreat staff, Mrs. Jean Bowler, Dr. Michael Cunningham, Father Bruno de Souza, and Deacon Manuel and Cella Valencia will be accompanying you during this retreat. During these months of the COVID-19 pandemic, almost every one of us has had to admit that our daily lives have become more difficult. We are less likely to see and visit with our friends and family. Our usual gathering places, such as many of our local places of business, schools, and even our churches, as well as restaurants and bars, other venues for entertainment, and even private homes, have been closed to us. We have been encouraged to stay at home as much as possible so that we can be safe from getting or spreading the virus. All of these lifestyle changes have made our lives more lonely, less interesting, and more difficult. It is out of this experience that we here at Mater Dolorosa have fashioned this retreat. We hope to explore with you the different ways God is present in all of these changes. What is God doing in our society and in us? Is there anything in our religious tradition that speaks to this experience of radical change? Can our noticing that God is with us in this experience give it new meaning? Can our walking with God in these experiences give new meaning to what's happening to us? We believe that taking some time to make connections between these new, difficult experiences and our rich faith tradition can make a huge difference in the meaning of our everyday lives. We would like to begin our retreat in the beautiful Retreat Center Chapel. So I invite you to join with me there. During this opening reflection, I want to take some time laying out the context for the retreat.
Okay, go. Thanks.
Greetings from all of us here at Mater Dolorosa. We are delighted to be able to join with you while you are on retreat. My name is Fr Mike Higgins. I'm on the retreat staff here at Mater Dolorosa and have the privilege of leading off the retreat with some reflections that I hope will help you enter wholeheartedly into this retreat. Some weeks ago, as I began planning this retreat, I realized that I was struggling with a great temptation. So I began to try to engage it. The temptation that I was struggling with was the temptation that grows right out of our pandemic. It was a temptation to withdraw from what's going on around us. I thought to myself, well, I'll just hibernate up here in beautiful Sierra Madre and I'll wait for the pandemic to run its course. Then I won't have to engage it. It would be pretty easy to disengage. We soon had to close the retreat center. There was no one coming and going. We had no other commitments as churches around us also closed. So I lived reading, praying, talking to the other members of the community, preparing meals, but basically just kind of waiting, not having any expectations particularly, just waiting. Then, of course, during that time, along with you, I was listening to the daily scripture readings we've had from the various prophets, particularly Isaiah and Micah, and reading the gospel passages from Matthew. I realize now that I was apparently kind of missing the point, but I was caught every once in a while as the prophets talked to the people. They kept saying, remember what God has done for us, who God is for us. Remember. And then they'd list the Exodus experiences and the restoration from the Babylon experiences, all as a means of reminding people who were struggling, as they so often were, that God was with them, and that God made sure they had what they needed, and that they didn't need to be afraid. A few weeks ago, all of a sudden during my prayer, I was able to connect the dots. Here I was, basically shut down, not particularly afraid, but concerned about the retreat center and the ministry here, concerned about the people that work here, concerned about my brother Passionists in the province, concerned about so many things, but still basically kind of shut down. And I couldn't help but think that the prophets were beginning to talk to me, or maybe I was beginning to listen to their message in a way I never had to listen to it before. So I've been wrestling with that. I've been asking myself, well, if I don't just sit here shut down, what do I do? Have you ever noticed that in all the stories we have from the Old Testament, many of them are about the desert? Have you ever wondered if there's some meaning in that? It's true that in the desert, where the people of Israel lived and many of the stories take place, the very danger found in the desert makes it an important place where God is found. And you come to understand yourself a lot better. Of course, it's true that the people of Israel were 40 years in the desert. It's unlikely that the pandemic will last 40 years, but it may last one or two. Still, it was true for the people of Israel that it was during that time in the desert and in their experiences in the desert that they came to a deep understanding of who they were and who God was. And understanding it persists into our own time. They came to realize that God was with them because he cared for them and even provided for them when they were helpless and couldn't provide for themselves. The prophets kept saying, remember, remember, remember. Remember when you came up against the Red Sea with the Egyptian soldiers at your back? and you were able to cross because of God's help, and the Egyptians were not. Remember when you had no food and manna came from heaven. Remember when you had no water and God gave you water gushing from the rock. Remember. The stories just go on, and the people of Israel did remember. They do remember to this very day. They remember that God was their special God. They remember when they were in Egypt, they were slaves. Now they realize after those desert experiences that they are precious people, God's chosen people. If they did not have all those difficult experiences, perhaps they would never have come to realize how precious they were in God's sight. When we think about it, the desert even had a powerful influence on Christ. Before Christ took up his mission, where did he go for 40 days and 40 nights? He went into the desert. His time there in the desert seemed to help him clarify in his mind what he was about to do. He was tempted by the devil 3 different times, we're told. And it was all about his mission, how he was to accomplish his mission. So he wrestled with the devil. But he came out of the desert ready and clear in his mind about how to do his mission. Before he chose his apostles, again, Jesus went to the desert for 40 days of prayer and reflection. I'm just trying to recall these stories to remind us that in our tradition, the desert, being in the desert, is one of the places where we meet God most profoundly. We come to a deeper understanding of who God is, how God is calling us, caring for us, challenging us, inviting us to come closer so that we can understand God more deeply. In some ways, we're in the desert, especially in these last 5 or 6 months, when we've been struggling, our whole society, and not only our society, but the whole world has been struggling with this disease that has so changed the ordinary ways we live our lives. We've lost access to our churches and watched so many of our businesses all across the country close down. We aren't allowed to gather, even at sporting events. Just go through the list of all the changes that we're having to make. Our world has gotten smaller, or the things we're able to do in our own worlds have gotten fewer and fewer and fewer. We are asked to stay home, to let go of all the many relationships and encounters we usually have in our daily lives. I suppose all of this could just be a waste. It could be something that we just hunker down on and live through. It could be just a time to survive, basically untouched. Or it could be a sacred time for us. It could be a special time when we go deeper in our relationships with God and our trust in Him. It could be a time when we have more hope because we know Christ is with us. It could be a time in which we pay special attention to the people in our lives and the relationships we have with family and friends with church and other church members. Perhaps it could be a time when we pay a lot more attention to their needs as well as our own. Maybe even their needs over and above ours. Maybe it could be a time when we take a hard look or a deeper look at what we have in our lives that gives us security. Maybe we need to reevaluate what we've been entrusting our security to. For example, the job we have or the skills we've developed, the money we have in the bank. Perhaps now we realize those things aren't quite as secure as we once thought they were. Our time in this desert could be unnerving, but it can be an invitation for us to take a deeper look at our lives. The prophets remind us how important the desert experiences are. Often in the Gospels, Jesus reminds us God is calling us all into this deep relationship with Him. Yes, this can be a sacred time to go deeper with God and friends and family. It can be a time of renewal in our hearts, opening to hope and a new understanding of what it really means to trust God, even in difficult times. Truly, these days can be so rich for us if we remember. Now that I've laid out a context for the retreat, let me encourage you to take some time for your personal prayer and reflection. Here are a couple of questions for reflection that may help you as you get started with this retreat. First question: do I have any experiences in my life that helped me realize that I was truly precious to God? Secondly, were those experiences easy or difficult? Were they joyful or painful? And finally, have I ever suddenly realized that the struggle I was having was a blessing rather than a curse? Our next retreat presentation will be given by Father Bruno de Souza, a member of the retreat team. He will be describing some of the ways the new limits on our lives often affect us. In the meantime, go in peace and have a wonderful retreat.